I'm guessing you never did a top 5 list of places you got laid.
No, but I mean, I could. It's mostly your mom's house. I'm so sorry. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. My name is Patrick Kuhn, alongside my host, as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you?
I've been better. I'm back at work, so I'm kind of bummed. I talked about last episode that I was on vacation, and so I was feeling good, and now I'm back to work, and I'm bummed, and it's been kind of crazy at work. They're changing a lot of stuff, and just getting back to the grind kind of sucks. Plus, I went to Louisville this weekend and I got pulled over and got a ticket. And
shit.
Yeah. So I gotta go to the DMV this weekend to get some stuff sorted out so I can pay the ticket. And
what side of the bridge?
It was near Jasper. So
Indiana.
Yeah. I mean, the guy was cool. I was speeding, so it is what it is, but it just
What were you doing?
I was doing 84 and a 70, but it was on 64. So everybody goes 80. I was going past a cluster and I came around a corner and he was sitting under under one of those overpasses.
Yeah.
And I tapped my brakes a little bit and I looked in my rearview mirror and I saw him pulling out. I was like, fuck. And you're not going to pull out and it was actually, there was a lot of traffic. So once he started pulling out, I was like, yeah, he's pulling me over and I'm definitely going to get a ticket. So
that sucks.
Yeah, it is what it is. Like I said, I was speeding. So it's just been not a great, last few days of my vacation and then starting work back up. But I did my fantasy draft. I got to hang out with my parents this weekend. Went to Louisville, like I said, and that was fun, but I'm just bummed out that I have to be back at work.
Yeah. How many tickets have you had in your life?
This is the second one. I've been pulled over plenty of times, so I usually can use my charm to get out of it. Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. We had my dogs in the back and of course they're just crazy. They're just little chihuahuas. So they're a mile a minute and it's crazy. And so they were barking the whole time. I'm sure that didn't help, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I was speeding. So whatever.
Do you have any more vacation left this year?
I'm taking a day off for Shocktober in Irvington. We've talked about that. Our friends over at the Obsessive Viewer are doing, that. It's like a little miniature film festival. I think it's the 16th of October. It's either the 15th or the 16th. I apologize. But yeah, I'm doing that. And then I have one more day. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm kind of running out of time, to be honest with you. Because once it gets closer to Christmas and Thanksgiving and all those holidays, the other ladies that I work with kind of eat those days up. So I don't know when I'll use it. I'll probably just roll over next year.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. So I guess we'll just go ahead and get started.
For sure.
If this is your first episode, we started off each episode by just checking in with each other. We don't get to talk as much as we'd like to, so we like to check in with each other, just talk about what we're into. So Tyler, what are you into this week?
This is a strange what I'm into because I don't think I've ever talked about like a full-fledged book before on the podcast. Usually
that's weird because I'm also going to talk about a book.
Oh wow, so
I don't think I've talked about a book before either, so that's kind of weird.
You know, we're just I guess exactly a month away from Shocktober, and you know we're going to watch tons of horror movies, and I'm going to watch tons of horror TV, and just consume as much as I can in October. But one thing that I'm really behind on that I want to read a lot more of is horror literature.
Yeah.
And so I was at Barnes & Noble with my wife a couple weekends ago, and I was just kind of browsing the internet on my phone, like what are the best horror books of all time. And I picked up a couple things. I have a few Stephen King books that I haven't read before, and I really want to read those. But there was a book that I just passed by at Barnes & Noble that I picked up just on a whim, just cause I wanted to read it. And honestly, it kind of sucks to talk about it on the podcast cause not too many people are going to probably even be interested in this book, because I think that you would only be interested if you are familiar with Indiana University or attended Indiana University. But it's called Haunted Hoosier Halls. it's about Indiana University and the ghost stories surrounding the campus and kind of, the folklore around the campus and urban legends and that kind of stuff. And I wish that I had the author's name off the top of my head. I don't. But she studied at IU and was a folklore major and is also a paranormal investigator for Indiana or in Indiana. And I don't know really where I stand on the whole ghost thing. I really doubt their existence, their paranormal existence quite a bit, but it's still kind of cool reading about ghost stories and what people think they see or think they believe. And it's especially cool to read about it because I'm so familiar with IU's campus because that's again where I graduated. I really like folklore and I really like urban legends quite a bit. I actually took a folklore class while I was at IU that talked a lot about urban legends, especially in southern Indiana and stuff. So it's a cool little book. I would recommend it to everyone, but I honestly know that if you're not too familiar with IU's campus, you're not going to be too interested in it. It does talk about, I would say half the book's about IU and the back half is about like Bloomington and other areas in southern Indiana. So there is some other stuff for people from this part of the state. But yeah, it's cool. It's getting me in the mood for Shocktober for sure.
All right, cool. Have you seen Killer Legends by any chance? It's on Netflix.
Yeah, I have.
Oh yeah, what'd you think of that?
It was drier than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But it was still pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mentioned this a few times. I've made it a resolution for me to watch more documentaries, and that was one that I wanted to watch. It's about urban legends and whatnot. I did not really like it that much. I thought that they tried way too much to solve the crimes. Like the idea behind the movie, as far as I understood it and kind of how it was sold to me, was the fact that they were trying to find the origin stories to these urban legends, and they kind of did, but then they tried to solve the case, and it's just like, I don't care. I'm not watching CSI. I'm watching this documentary about urban legends, and I don't know. It bothered me.
Yeah. I kind of appreciate that a little bit. The author's name was, son of a bitch. It's Kat Klockow. And she, like I said, she's a paranormal investigator. What's cool about the way she writes this is she tries to pretty much debunk every story that she brings up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that makes a really good paranormal investigator. Like, they're out to prove it wrong. Like, you're saying, all right, myth, prove yourself right. And she almost has an explanation behind each one on why it's probably not too legit. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, cool, man. Well, I am also going to talk about a book. I'm going to actually talk about a couple of things, but the first thing that I'm going to talk about is a book, and it's also a horror book, and it's a book that I bought sometime around this time last year, and I was so determined to read it for Shocktober as well, but I never got around to it because with everything else, kind of reading went to the back burner for me. I just have not had time to read legit books.
I mean, it's pretty overrated.
I mean, I like my books with pictures, but I finally am starting to get through the first Strain book, The Strain. I love the TV show. I bought this book on my Kindle about halfway through season 1 because I was starting to really dig the show, and I wanted to get more of the mythology and kind of get caught up on the books because I know how much fun that can be for the Game of Thrones fans that have read the book.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, that would be kind of cool to have read all the books before the second season came out. Well, I didn't even get through the first book before the second season came out, and the second season's almost over. They just had issue 8, or episode 8, which I'm reviewing each episode on our podcast, or God damn it, our website, thenerdspodcast.com. So definitely check that out. I am really digging it. It's one of my favorite shows on TV right now. And so I was just like, you know what? I am going to sit down and read this fucking book. And so I've taken like 20, 30 minutes each night before I go to bed because it'll help me go to sleep. I'm kind of an insomniac. And so I've been sitting down and reading it, and it's really good. I like getting a lot more of the mythology because you can kind of dig into the characters a little bit more than you can on TV shows. So I like that. And The Strain, as much as I like the TV show, it's kind of struggled with some of the character development. It kind of gets a little bit boring. And when you're reading it, Del Toro wrote the book, but he also wrote it with a guy named Chuck Hogan. And so I think realistically, Del Toro probably came up with the story and then Chuck Hogan wrote the book, because he's not that Del Toro's not a legit author, but this guy is a legit author. So I'm pretty sure that's how that went down. And it's really crisp, the story. And I just like it. They can dive into the characters a lot more than they can on the TV show. And it's just kind of cool to get a little bit more background to some of these characters. And it's kind of cool to see the differences between the TV show, because I am pretty much as far into the book as like maybe the 4th or 5th episode of the first season is in the show. So it's kind of cool to look back and see the differences between the TV show and the book and get a lot more background to the characters.
Yeah, the strain is something I really want to get into, and I just haven't had time. And I fear that as it keeps progressing and I keep putting it off, I'm just going to eventually say, well, I'm too far behind now. So I definitely need to get into it. Maybe I'll start watching it for Shocktober. Yeah,
for sure. I couldn't suggest it more. There's a few episodes in the first season that are kind of lackluster, but it definitely found its stride in the second season, and I've just been blown away. There's maybe been one episode where I'm just like, nah, like I just kind of whatever, but the whole season, I mean, they've had 8 episodes and only one of them has been okay. Like the rest of them have been really awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm really enjoying it. So definitely check that out if you haven't. And the book is really good as well. It's a trilogy of books. Obviously, I'm only like 3/4 of the way through the first one. So I still got a while before I'll finish the other 2, but I'm really looking forward to them, and I'm enjoying the show in general.
All right, cool.
All right. So the second thing, and I'll be quick with this one as well, because I already put a first impressions up on the website, thenerdspodcast.com, and I'll be reviewing hopefully a couple of days after this posts. I will be giving a full review of Madden 16. I've been really playing the shit out of this game. I've come to love it more than I thought I could. Like, I'm a huge Madden apologist. I love the game. I'm brand loyal to EA Sports. I love their Madden games and their games in general. Their college football game, even though they haven't had one in a couple of years, was really fun. And so I kind of defend them, even though I kind of agree when somebody says, well, they're just roster updates. Like each game, each year is just kind of updating the rosters. And I can see where they're coming from, because some of the games don't really take huge leaps and bounds as far as the gameplay is concerned. But I do disagree with you this year. Last year they did a really good job of changing the defensive players a little bit, and they shifted the focus this year on offensive players. And it's been really fun. They changed how you can throw the ball as a quarterback. I mean, you were always able to dictate where the ball was thrown as far as like leading and left and right and that sort of thing. But there's actually certain buttons you can push that throw the ball low or just kind of throw a jump ball, which really becomes fun, because then in earlier games, basically you would throw the ball and you just kind of hope that the guy would catch it. And once the guy caught it, then you would take control over him. But actually, when you're playing and you throw the ball, you can take control over the wide receiver, and there are certain catches. Like you can do a run after the catch, and then you can do a possession catch, or you can do aggressive catch. They all have their pros and cons. What I really like to do is the aggressive catch. I like to just have a really tall receiver on my team that can jump real high, and I'll just fucking toss it up there. I'm a Bears fan, so a lot of times I just play with the Bears, and I'll just toss it up to Alshon Jeffrey and just do the aggressive catch, and he just goes up and gets it, because he's one of the best wide receivers in the game. It just adds so much more to the game for nerds like me that just love that aspect. Just when you're watching football, there's so many times where the guy is covered and the quarterback just trusts him and just throws the ball up, and he just goes up and makes a play. The quarterback shouldn't have thrown the ball. Yeah. But he just trusted the guy was going to make the play. And it just feels, because they've added this feature, it just feels much more realistic, because there's multiple times where I'll just throw it up because it's Alshon Jeffrey and he's just going to go up and get it. And so it just makes it a lot more realistic, and it just adds a lot more to the game. And there's also, on the flip side of that, the defenders. You can switch to the defenders and do the same thing. You can either hold, I think it's A on Xbox One. I don't know what it is on PlayStation 4. You can hold the A button and he'll just go for the tackle, or you can do the Y button. It's more aggressive, like the wide receiver, and he'll actually play the ball. And a lot of times you get interceptions that way. So it's really cool. I mean, the game is beautiful. They've been beautiful pretty much since the inception of Madden. Like, as far as in relative terms to the other football games out there, they've always been great with the graphics and this year is no different. They've added a few things here and there, nothing huge other than draft champions, which is fun. You kind of get to draft your fantasy team and that's kind of fun. But other than that, not a whole lot's changed, but just that added mechanics to the passing and defense has made the game so much more fun to play.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I almost picked up Madden last week and I ended up getting cold feet and not doing it. And I'm actually considering getting the new Metal Gear Solid game that just came out this week instead. But
yeah, I really want that game so bad. It's getting like rave reviews but I just got Madden and I'm still making my way through New Story Plus on Arkham Knight. And it's just, I don't see how I'm going to fit Metal Gear Solid in before Battlefront comes out.
Yeah,
is it Halo that comes out first?
I think Halo, then Battlefront. I could be wrong.
I don't remember. But yeah, I think you're right.
It is nice to know that they're trying to at least keep Madden fresh from year to year and adding new things like that are beneficial to gameplay.
Yeah, it seems like every 2 to 3 years, they'll add something like this that is just like, wow, where had this been the whole time?
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. If you haven't picked it up yet and you're interested at all in these games or football in general, I definitely suggest it because it's probably one of the better games in the last 4 or 5 years. I really liked last year's game. Like I said, they added a lot to the defensive side of the ball, but this is definitely the best installment in the last 4 or 5 years for sure.
All right. Awesome.
All right. So the next segment is just plainly called comics. Tyler and I read a lot of comics each week and we just like to spotlight one that we're reading. So Tyler, what are you reading this week?
So I've read quite a few comics the last 2 weeks just trying to get caught up, and I don't really have any that I want to spend a lot of time on, but there were 3 titles that I got caught up on.
Okay.
And I just want to say a little bit about all 3 titles.
Okay.
I'll keep it pretty quick. So I finally got caught up all the way on Mantle. I know that I've talked about it and you've talked about it. So it's definitely something that we're both recommending.
I almost read the new issue last night, but I didn't.
Yeah, it's really great. I mean, we both have praised it before, but it honestly just keeps getting better. I like some of the twists and turns they're throwing into it. And the cliffhanger in the last one was phenomenal. So if you're not reading Mantle, it's by Image Comics. I definitely would recommend it. Also A-Force. So I talked about this previously as well. And when I first talked about it, I talked about how I couldn't really take it seriously. It almost seemed like a sorority book. Like, you have this group of strong female characters, and instead of making them intimidating and putting them up against a large threat, it was almost like watching Gilmore Girls or something, or, reading a story in that vein. I will say that it seems like it's getting a little bit more serious, and the characters are being taken a little bit more seriously in issue 3. So I'm going to stick with it. And I know that this will be a title that will be around after Secret Wars. So I look forward to hopefully sticking with it and it hopefully getting better and better as it continues to grow. And then the last one is Batman 43.
Still haven't gotten it.
Really? I mean, I've talked about Batman countless times on this podcast. I mean, it's my favorite comic out right now. Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo are amazing. How many times can we say that on this podcast? But 43 is really great. It kind of, you haven't read it, so I won't go into spoilers, but there was this, Commissioner Gordon is basically mech Batman now. And, as soon as, this arc started, there was a surprise return character, and this issue kind of delves into how that character returned and what's going on, and offered a lot of great backstory to what happened after Endgame. So it's definitely strong. I still love the comic, but I'm just kind of bidding my time till the real Batman comes back. Yeah. Because that's honestly what I want to see. Like, I appreciate that they're doing something different. It's kind of cool what they're doing, but I don't know that it's going to stay cool for a long period of time. Like, it's going to get old kind of quick. Like, it's just eventually going to build up to Bruce Wayne being back, and that's what I'm hoping for. So, we'll see how this comic continues to progress.
Cool, man.
All right. What are you reading this week?
Well, I'm going to spotlight one, but I'm going to kind of mention another one real quick because it's relevant. I've talked a lot about Howard the Duck. Really like it. Issue 5 was released a while back. I finally got to it the other night. Read it. It's fantastic. It's actually the end of the series. It's kind of weird because it's the end of the series, but then it's coming back in a few months. And it's just going to start over with Howard the Duck #1 after Secret Wars is over. It's going to be the same team I believe that's right. I'm almost positive this is going to be the same writer, artist, team. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. It's one of my favorite comics. I'm not even going to qualify it. It is one of my favorite comics. It's really funny. The action's great, but its best quality is definitely the humor. It's very meta, sarcastic. It's just, he's a funny character and it's really great. Number 5 was probably the best issue. It was just fantastic, but that's not the comic I really want to talk about. The comic I want to talk about is Howard the Human, number 1, which is a Secret Wars tie-in. They call it a Secret Wars tie-in, but it's only a tie-in in the sense that it's just a one-shot story that they can tell. They have an excuse to tell this weird story because Secret Wars is going on and everything's getting blown up anyways. So they might as well go ahead and tell this weird story. It has nothing to do with what's going on in Secret Wars. It's called Howard the Human, like I said. And essentially, the Howard the Duck character is a human being, but it's not like he was turned into a human. It's just like, it's the same character except for he's just a guy and everybody else are animals. So I know it sounds weird, but I love that they kind of kept that same dynamic because in Howard the Duck, he's a duck living in a human world. And so he's an outsider. And in this book, they just kind of flip the roles and now everybody else are animals and he's a human living in an animal world. So you still have that dynamic. He's still that outsider, which I appreciate. And he's still a private eye, which is hilarious. He's actually good at his job in this comic. Not so much in the Howard the Duck series. He's really bad at it. And he kind of just lucks his way into cases and solving them and whatnot. And this comic, like I said, is just a one shot. So it's just one and done. And it was great. It wasn't by the same people that does the Howard the Duck comic, which I was surprised with. It was great. It was like a crime thriller. There's a twist at the end that I really appreciate that I won't spoil just because I really suggest you guys going out and reading this because it's a lot of fun. It has that same type of meta sarcastic humor as Howard the Duck because essentially it's just the same character, just in a human's body. And it's just a lot of fun. So awesome, I definitely suggest checking out Howard the Human or Howard the Duck. Either one, definitely check out both of them. They're both great.
Yeah, I'll probably check out Howard the Duck when it relaunches after Secret Wars. That's the cool thing about Secret Wars is they've kind of used it as an excuse to tell one-off stories that are sometimes a little weird, but also can be pretty cool. So
yeah, for sure.
All right. You ready for us to move on?
Yeah, man.
All right. So our next segment is Nerd News. Every week I go through the stories that broke and we just kind of discuss some of the bigger ones as it pertains to nerddom and fandom. So the last few weeks have been pretty light on nerd news and this week is no different.
Yeah.
So, we'll go ahead and get started. Just have a couple stories here. This one was actually, well, I found it today. I think that it was released today. It was an interview Steven Spielberg did.
Yep.
Where he talked about how he thought the end of superhero movies they would fade away here very soon. He compared it to how Westerns faded away. And he says we're kind of in the same period, as far as superheroes go, where it might get oversaturated and the crowd might not be there for it anymore. He's not the first person to ever say this. I think that, there have been some other prolific people say this as well, a few years ago. And obviously, you know, since they said it a few years ago, it hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. So what do you think? Where do you side on this?
I think to equate it to Westerns, I think it's definitely interesting because if you had said that 50 years ago that Westerns were going to fade away, nobody would have believed you. And I think there are very few people that would believe him when he says that, or believe anybody when they say that superhero movies are going to fade away. But it's definitely an interesting comparison. I think ultimately he is correct, but I don't think it's going to happen as drastically as it did with Westerns.
Yeah.
Because you just don't see them anymore.
Yeah.
At all. And I just don't think that that's going to happen because you already have these established characters with established fan bases. And I just don't think that people are going to just completely grow out of it or anything like that. There are certain movies and nowadays like Guardians of the Galaxy that certain kids could watch those movies and kind of grow up and loving superheroes. And I think Marvel is doing a great job of kind of breeding a new generation of superhero comic book fans.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's going to fade away as drastically as he says it is, or he thinks it's going to, but I certainly think that there is going to be a bubble and it's going to burst eventually. I don't think they're going to be making as many superhero movies, and I don't think it's going to be making as much money as they are currently, but I don't think they're going to fade away completely.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think that I see where he's coming from, and I agree that I think superhero movies will maybe be weeded out. Like, obviously this summer had a lot of great superhero movies, but Fantastic Four was not one of them.
Yeah.
So, and it didn't make any money. So I think that it's not just like, 15 years ago where you could just put a superhero name on a movie and it would make, millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, you have to make it good now.
Yeah, the audience expects quality because they've come to see quality superhero movies, whether it's The Dark Knight or a lot of the stuff that Marvel's put out. But I also kind of think that comparing the superhero genre to the Western genre is like comparing apples and oranges, because Westerns, I mean, it's a genre in of itself, but the superhero genre has source material that's already beloved.
Yeah, exactly.
So you already have a fan base there.
Yeah.
So I think that, I don't know. I don't think that it'll ever truly go away, like you said, but I think that the quality is going to need to stay really, like Fox learned the hard way, that the quality has to be very high.
Yeah, for sure.
And, Steven Spielberg, I respect the hell out of him as a filmmaker, but, just because he's directed a lot of movies doesn't mean that he knows this, so I don't know. We'll see.
It just kind of rubs me the wrong way. I didn't read the whole article, but I read most of it. It just kind of bugs me when I don't like that people just kind of, superhero movie. Like, they just kind of just dismiss them as garbage and they're ruining movies. And I mean, go fuck yourself. Like, seriously, yeah.
Hipsters.
I mean, I respect the hell out of Steven Spielberg, and he's made some of my favorite movies of all time. So, I mean, I have to respect him. He'll forget more about filmmaking than I'll ever know in my life. So you have to respect him, but I don't like people that just dismiss them, because there has been some really, really great superhero movies. And
for sure.
I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, is Dark Knight.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is the perfect movie. It's a crime movie that just so happens to have Batman in it. So I don't think that you can just dismiss them anymore. Yeah. Maybe 10, 15 years ago you could have, but I think Iron Man kind of set the standard, set the bar, and you have to follow suit. Like you said with Fantastic Four, you can't just put a superhero's name on it and just put out garbage.
Yeah. Like, the audience has become too smart for that.
Yeah, for sure.
With superhero movies too, you can group them together in a genre, but in reality, a lot of superhero movies that are based, or even comic book movies, are different genres.
Yeah.
So you're not getting cookie cutter movies over and over. Like, there's maybe similar qualities from this film to this film, but for the most part, they feel very different.
Yeah.
They don't all take place in the desert and feature cowboys like Westerns.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I
mean, cowboys and aliens too.
I don't think that the end is imminent.
No.
So yeah. Go fuck yourself, Steven Spielberg. That's what we say.
God damn it. Now I got to make that the episode title.
All right. This next one was another story that just so happened to pop up today. Thank God. Nickelodeon is looking at possibly bringing back some of their older, more nostalgic shows from the 90s. Not necessarily as ongoing series, but maybe specials or, TV special movies or whatever. And I don't know. I can see why they're doing that. Nostalgia's always going to hit home and bring in big numbers, but I'd be interested to see how they go about doing something like this.
Yeah, we had an episode, I mean, it's got to be at least a year old at this point, where we talked about nerd gaps. And I don't remember if this was one of them or not, but for me, I always had cable. I always had satellite. Like, I had access to Nickelodeon pretty much a good chunk of my life. Never watched it.
Really?
Yeah.
So this story doesn't mean anything to you?
No. I I've watched more Nickelodeon in the last 2 years just because the new Ninja Turtles cartoon is so fucking good that I've watched more. And I don't watch it like every episode, mind you. I've just seen an episode here and there of the new Ninja Turtles cartoon. And that's more Nickelodeon than I watched like my entire life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's surprising. I never had cable as a kid, but my grandma did, and she babysat me a whole lot. So anytime I went over there, I just like binged Nickelodeon all day. So I did grow up on it. And I was going to ask you what your favorite like 90s Nickelodeon show was that you'd like.
I couldn't even name one.
Brought up. So that's sad.
Yeah. It's so weird too that all my friends were big into Nickelodeon as well. And I don't know. I just never got around to it.
Well, that's a bummer, but whatever. All right. We'll move on.
Yeah.
So one more story, and this one is a sad one. So
Sure.
Wes Craven passed away this week, and I believe was from complications with brain cancer. He had been, I honestly didn't know he had brain cancer until he passed away. So yeah, that's really sad.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping you'd take the reins there instead of it just ending awkwardly like that. But I don't know. I thought it'd be cool if we kind of talked about what our favorite Wes Craven movies were.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, of course, there's the Scream franchise. Those movies are fantastic. Maybe not Scream 3. That's definitely my least favorite of them, but they're just fantastic. I really enjoy the concept of Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
I thought the first one was good. The first Nightmare on Elm Street. The other ones I can't honestly say that I dislike them because I've never watched them from start to finish. I've just seen bits and pieces of them. So I can't honestly give like, oh, that one was bad and this one was okay. I did, however, once I heard of his passing, cause it's been about a week.
Yeah.
I watched, New Nightmare, which have you ever seen this movie, Tyler?
No, I have not.
It is fucking awesome. It is really great. I enjoyed it thoroughly. It's a lot more dark Freddy Krueger. He's not making jokes here, like cracking jokes and stuff like that. And so that was cool. It's meta before Scream. So I thought that was kind of cool. Like it came out a couple of years before Scream did. So it was kind of his foray into that meta horror movie. And so that was really cool. Do you even know what it's about? No, it's really kind of a cool concept. And I wish I had seen it. Matt, it's probably been close to a year now when you were sick and you had to miss an episode. Yeah. We talked about movies, about making movies. And if I had seen this movie prior to that episode, I probably would have brought it up because it's basically about the woman who played the protagonist in the first Nightmare on Elm Street. It's, I think her name is Helen or Heather or something. She has a weird name like Lamon Camp or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, I butchered that. That's not even close. But, and that's who she plays in New Nightmare. And they're thinking Wes Craven's in it and he's thinking about making a new movie. And so she starts having these nightmares and getting these phone calls from essentially Freddy Krueger. And it's really cool. It's very meta and it's very cool. I enjoyed it thoroughly. The ending was not great. I mean, it was kind of weird. They end up going to essentially hell and there's this weird tongue scene where she like stabs him in the tongue. It's really weird. And the special effects, obviously it was made in the early 90s. So the special effects aren't that great, but for an early 90s horror movie for a franchise that was essentially kind of dead at that point, it was really cool to see. Just, I don't want to say that it's my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street because like I said, I haven't seen all of them, but I'd put it up there with the first one. The first it's good. I wouldn't say it's necessarily great, but I really thoroughly enjoyed New Nightmare. Yeah, I actually bought the Nightmare on Elm Street like complete set a few years ago, and I never watched all of them. I just watched the first one. And Nightmare on Elm Street's kind of been that series that I respect. Yeah. But again, like you, I think, I don't want to say it's overrated, but it just didn't really hit the right notes with me. And it sucks that like we're eulogizing Wes Craven and just talking about how much we don't really like Nightmare on Elm Street. But, I mean, he did fantastic stuff that I really do like Scream, of course. Yeah. And he did a ton of movies in the 70s that like helped build a genre, like The Hills Have Eyes and Last House on the Left. Did he do
Spit on Your Grave, or was that somebody else?
I don't think so.
I don't think he did. It's very similar to, it reminds me of The Last House on the Left, though.
Have you seen The Hills Have Eyes?
Not the original.
I'll have to let you borrow. It's pretty good. I enjoyed it.
Okay. That sounds like a plan. I would say my favorite Wes Craven movie, though, it's actually a movie he didn't write. And I don't know. It'd probably be a Scream movie, but I'm not going to go Scream because that's too obvious. So I'm going to say this other movie, like I said, he didn't write it. Red Eye. Did you ever see that?
I've seen bits and pieces of it. I honestly didn't even know that was him.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a few years, and now I really want to go back and revisit it because I don't want to say I had forgotten about it, but it just kind of had floated to the back of my mind, and I believe I even have it on DVD, and so I'm definitely going to watch it for Shocktober, but it's really cool. It has Cillian Murphy in it and Rachel McAdams, and it's not so much a horror movie as it is a thriller movie. It's kind of cool. Like, I remember the trailer for it, and the whole first half of the movie kind of makes it seem like it's a romantic comedy or like a dramatic romance maybe.
Yeah.
And, it takes a sharp turn, and Cillian Murphy's character is basically taking her hostage on this plane and forcing her to use her job to help him and his organization that he works for off a politician, and things kind of spiral out of control from there. So it's really good. It's a really great thriller.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've heard good things about it, but it was just one of those things. I've seen 10 minutes here, I've seen 20 minutes there, and it's kind of weird. I feel like I have the gist of the movie, but I've never actually sat down and watched the whole thing.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it.
I had actually forgotten that he did the Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
I've never seen it, but I'm a huge fan of the character, so I'll definitely have to circle back to that one.
All right. Awesome, man.
All right.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. That's all I have for Nerd News.
All right, cool, man. So we'll just go ahead and get right into the main topic. The last couple episodes, we have been talking about our top 10 favorite movies of all time. Tyler and I kind of alternated episodes, and it's back to me. And so 2 weeks ago, we talked about my 10 through 6 favorite movies of all time. So we're going to complete the list of this episode. And like I said a couple of weeks ago, this is my favorite, not the best. Obviously, we can't do that list. We haven't seen every movie, and we're not technically sound enough to say this is the best movie. So it's definitely my favorite movies. And of course, like a couple of weeks ago, I will kind of bring a personal touch. Obviously, people relate to different movies different ways, and that's kind of how I formed my list. Just kind of a recap. If you haven't listened to my first episode, I don't know why you're listening to this one, but I'll just go ahead and give you a little bit of a recap. My number 10 was Rocky Horror Picture Show. 9 was Holy Grail. 8 was A Thing. 7 was Empire Strikes Back, but it was kind of a default Star Wars slot. And then number 6 was The Dark Knight. So like I said, we're going to do 5 through 1. My 5th favorite movie of all time is High Fidelity. It was released in 2000, and this is a movie that kind of took a tumble. It was for the longest time, basically since I had been asked the question, like at a certain point in your life, like when you're in junior high and high school and people find out that you're a movie buff, they always ask you, oh, what's your favorite movie? And for the longest time, probably until the last like 3-4 years, this was it. It was always High Fidelity. That was my default answer. It's fantastic. For a long time, I was a drama geek in high school. I know that's probably hard for you to imagine, Tyler, but I did all those plays and whatnot. And that was always kind of my go-to monologue. What came first, Music or Misery? I love that monologue. It's fantastic writing. I really enjoy it. So I used to do that. I wish I could remember it, or I would spot it off real quick, but it's been years since I've had to do it.
Oh, darn.
I know. Shucks. And I actually used to, this was kind of my way of, I never broke up with a girlfriend because of this, but this was always for the longest time. This was kind of my barometer. Like, is the relationship going to work out? Like, I will sit her down and we'll watch High Fidelity. And if she doesn't dig it, then I'm like, yeah, this is probably not going to work out, because it's just a perfect movie for me. For the longest time, I I actually wanted to own a record store because of this movie, which would have been a fucking terrible life decision because of iTunes, you motherfuckers. But anyways, it's just fantastic. It's just a bunch of nerds hanging out, talking about music. Of course, there's the relationship and kind of the back and forth, them breaking up at the beginning and getting back together and kind of their troubles. There's definitely at the heart of the movie, but my favorite scenes are always just them hanging out at the record store, making top 5 lists, which we do a lot on the podcast. And it's kind of the reason I loved doing top 5 lists. I wrote for my newspaper as well. I was pretty popular in high school. I was like a drama geek and I wrote for the newspaper. Me and my buddies actually had a monthly column at the newspaper where we did a top 5 list.
Yeah.
And that spawned from how much we love this movie.
I'm guessing you never did a top 5 list of places you got laid.
No, but I mean, I could. It's mostly your mom's house. I'm so sorry. If you're listening, I'm so sorry. But yeah, this movie is fantastic. It was number 1 for a long, long time. And it didn't necessarily get knocked down because of the quality of the movie. If you've never seen it, definitely check it out. It's just kind of one of those things where as I got older, I didn't dislike the movie. It was just that I started to expand my horizons a little bit and started to watch more movies that I'd never seen before, some older movies, which you'll find on the list later, that I just kind of like, I appreciate what this movie is doing a little bit more than High Fidelity. It's one of the few movies that I've actually read the book. I enjoyed the movie so much that I went back and read the book back when I wasn't reading a whole lot.
Yeah.
So, that says a lot about how much I love this movie. And it's one of those things that I just really relate to the characters, and Jack Black is fucking hilarious in this movie. It came out before Jack Black was kind of annoying. He played the same character in the movies and was just kind of the goofball. And he's definitely the goofball in this movie, but it was before he was kind of annoying and played it in every single movie he was in. So it's kind of charming in this movie.
Well, it sounds like you and I could never date. Because I had never seen this movie actually, and you know, when we started hanging out and becoming friends, this was your favorite movie of all time. So I asked to borrow it, and I watched it, and I didn't dislike it by any means. I just didn't connect with it like you did. I can respect why you connected with it and why it's on your top 10 for sure. It just didn't hit those notes for me, probably because I'm not a huge music geek and that kind of stuff. That
might also be one of the reasons why I kind of fell down, was because I am 28 years old and I'm essentially an old man because I don't listen to the radio. Like I can't even tell you what's popular right now. I listen to the same music I listened to in high school.
There's that song on Madden about not being able to feel your face.
Yeah. I can sing the chorus to that, but apparently I was singing the wrong lyrics the entire time. Anyways, that's an inside joke. I might just cut that out. And you guys don't know what we're talking about. Anyways, so number 4 is The Shawshank Redemption. That was released in 1994. I've talked about it before. I think it was a nerd favorite where we talked about basically our favorite movie that never won Best Picture. This was my choice because I think it went up against Pulp Fiction, Forrest Gump. Like it was like a monster year.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, I think Forrest Gump ended up winning. So it's definitely a popular pick. I didn't actually know this, but I don't remember I think I was looking up the release date, and it's number 1 on IMDb's top 250. Yes, I knew it was for a while, but I didn't know it had kind of reclaimed that spot.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely a popular pick. I'm not going out on a limb when I say that this is one of my favorite movies of all time, because it's clearly a lot of people's favorite movie of all time. And it's well deserved. It's just a fantastic story. I love the message. It's kind of basically life is shitty, but you determine, your attitude kind of determines what you get out of it. And I think that's a powerful story. It was one of the first movies I can remember watching that I don't know how exactly. Basically, a lot of times when you watch movies, obviously the guys in prison are bad guys. They did something to deserve it. And as a kid, you always kind of just assumed, well, if you're in prison, you did something bad. Well, Tim Robbins' character didn't do anything bad. He was innocent. And this movie kind of shows you that just because you're in jail doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. And the people in power in this movie are actually the bad guys. And so I like that, kind of role reversal sort of thing. And it's just one of those movies that when I see it on TV, it's like, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing for the next 2 hours. I'm watching this movie. It's just, it gets me every time. No matter how many times I've seen it, there's just something about this movie that just kind of draws me to it. And so I just can't get enough of it. So when it's on TV, I'm just like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Even though I sit through the commercials when I own the goddamn movie on DVD, I could just pop it in and watch it, without the commercials. But it's just a fantastic movie. I'm not a huge Tim Robbins fan, but for some reason, I think it's the material and the people around him are really great. It just kind of elevates his game because I've never really seen him in a movie since this movie that I really felt the same way. Morgan Freeman is fantastic. He narrates his movie before it was cool that he narrated like every fucking movie. So I thought that was kind of great. And just the ending was great. You finally get the payoff that you want the entire movie, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I love this movie to death. I've talked a lot about in my movies from 10 to 6, how in high school I went through this renaissance of watching a bunch of stuff that I had never seen before in my earlier life and being introduced to a ton of things by my friends and just becoming a film buff. And this was one of the movies that I was introduced for the first time in high school, and I was just blown away. It's such a great movie and very deserving of a spot on your list. And I definitely agree with you too. I haven't really seen a lot of movies that I like Tim Robbins in.
Yeah.
But he's great in this.
All right. So moving right along, number 3 is Planet of the Apes. The original, released in 1968. It is the oldest film on my list by like a few months. And it is one of those films where it's kind of weird that I like it as much as I do. Not because it's not good. It's a fantastic movie, but it's just like I hadn't seen a Planet of the Apes movie until the Mark Wahlberg one.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of embarrassing. I'm kind of proud of myself though, because I went and saw it and I was fairly young when that movie came out. I think it came out in like 2001. I was probably in like the 7th or 8th grade at that time. And I remember watching it with my mom and thinking, nah, it was all right. Like I wasn't blown away. The ending was really fucking weird. And as a young kid, I kind of was proud of myself that I realized that I didn't get caught up in all the action and whatnot. I still realized that it was a pretty weird fucking movie. And my mom I still remember this to this day that we got into the car and I was just like, nah, it was all right. She's like, yeah, it was really bad. And the original was really good and you should watch that. Like if you were interested in this movie at all. And it took me a while before I finally caught up with it.
Yeah.
Mostly because I had seen, most of Beneath the Planet of the Apes, which is the second one. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the worst ones. And I just remember just hating it and thinking, well, I don't know what the hell that bitch is talking about. These movies are stupid. Again, I'm sorry. If you're listening, I apologize. I have, in the matter of 15 minutes, insulted both of our mothers. Anyways, and so I finally got around to it. I think it was either my sophomore or junior year in college. So it was real late. It's within the last like 5 or 6 years. I watched a documentary I think it's called Beyond the Planet of the Apes, where they just kind of talk about how the franchise grew into like this juggernaut. And I really enjoyed the documentary. So I was like, you know what? If I enjoyed it that much, I might as well just go ahead and get the movies and watch the movies. And I just fell in love with them. I'm a huge fan of sci-fi. I've talked a ton about it on the podcast. Obviously, we're huge nerds and we love sci-fi. But I also like sci-fi that has a social aspect to it, a social satire to it. And I really appreciate the theme of like hubris and how we think pretty highly of ourselves and just how that can backfire. And there's a little bit of an undertone about animal cruelty. And they hit that a little bit harder later. I think it's Escape from the Planet of the Apes. The roles are reversed and a couple of the apes from the first movie are treated the same way that they were treating Charlton Heston's character in the first movie. So, they hit that a little bit harder in that movie, but there is a little bit of that in, the first Planet of the Apes movie. I love the franchise as a whole. And this is definitely by far the best one of the original franchise. I'll say that. I just love it. I love sci-fi and I love the social satire, especially in this particular entry of the franchise.
I mean, I know you pretty well, so I figured this movie was going to pop up eventually, and I knew it would be high. What's surprising to me, though, is that you didn't see it for the first time till college.
Yep.
I did not know that, so that's crazy.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about this, and I know you brought it up in your first episode last week. You kind of get to a point where you start kind of growing as a movie buff, and you kind of start expanding your horizons.
Yeah.
And this was a movie that I always wanted to get into. And it was just one of those things that I just kind of slipped through the cracks. And then when I finally watched it, I was just like, what the fuck took me so long? Because this movie is fantastic. And I'm actually kind of glad I waited when I did, because I don't think I would have caught everything that I don't think I would have appreciated it as much as I do now, because it's one of those movies that every time I watch it, I find something else I like about it. And it's another movie that I like so much that I actually went back and read the book. And there's a lot of differences with the book. And I kind of appreciate that. I talked obviously in the open, what we're into, that there's a lot of differences between The Strain, the TV show, and the book. There's a lot of differences between the Planet of the Apes book and the first movie. And I definitely like that. And I like the mythology behind it. And there's a lot of cool stuff in this franchise. And I'm glad that they rebooted it. And, we will definitely be hearing more of the franchise later.
Awesome, man.
I mean, that's not a huge spoiler. I got 2 more movies to talk about. So, well, that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and move on to number 2, which is another movie that was released in 1968, a couple of months after Planet of the Apes. It's Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, yeah, of course.
The original. Speaking of social satire, this movie has a ton of it. It definitely has a lot of racial overtones, some segregation stuff in there. And it's just a fantastic movie. It's a great horror movie. I love how they did so much with so little. A lot of the actors, just because they couldn't afford to get a ton of actors, played multiple parts. And a lot of the main actors actually played zombies. And it was just really cool. George Romero is just a fucking genius. And he just did so much with so little. It's really gory. And I feel like people forget about it because it's in black and white for budgetary reasons. And it kind of masks how really just insanely gory this movie is considering the fact that it was released in the late 60s. And I just love how it stood the test of time. And this is another movie that I didn't see until I was also in college. It's kind of weird. I have a special connection to this movie and the Dead franchise in general, because it was one of the first date nights that I ever had with my then girlfriend, now wife. We used to do this thing because we're both big film nerds.
Yeah.
We used to do this thing where she would bring a couple of movies and I would bring a couple of movies, and we'd just sit there and watch like 3-4 movies one night. And that was our date night. Like we'd just spend like 4 or 5 hours together just watching movies. And we slowly, like within the course of like a month, went through all of the Dead movies. And I just knew she was special when she loved Night of the Living Dead. So I always have like a special place in my heart, because this was one of the first times I saw this movie. It was with my now wife, and she loved it just as much as I did. And
does it bum you out that that's just like a really generic love story? Yeah, I'm just kidding.
George Romero is a genius, and this, like Star Wars, is kind of my default George Romero slot. I mean, he's had a lot of good movies, but this is definitely the best of them. I love Dawn of the Dead, the remake and the original. The Dead movies after Land of the Dead kind of fall off a little bit. I'm really looking forward to the new one, which I can't remember what the title is, but it's going to be an origin story to Night of the Living Dead. Wow. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, he had a Kickstarter like a year ago. Him and his son are making the movie. So I'm really looking forward to that. Diary of the Dead was okay. And then Survival of the Dead is just a hot mess. I fucking hate that movie. But he has other movies like The Crazies that I really appreciate. And so this is kind of my default George Romero spot. Just like Star Wars, I kind of just picked my best or my favorite Star Wars film and kind of slotted it in number 7. This is kind of my George Romero slot.
Awesome, man.
Yep. And I love the movie so much that I got a tattoo of him on my leg. So I will forever be attached to this movie.
All right.
So my number 1 is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which was released last year. We reviewed it on the podcast. It's actually the only movie we have reviewed that I've given a 5 out of 5 for. And I kind of half jokingly said when we reviewed it last year that it was my favorite movie of all time. And I don't want to say that I stuck with it because I don't feel like I kind of trapped myself, because the more I've watched this movie, the more I really, really love it. It's just fantastic. I mean, of course, I already love the franchise. I just talked about the original Planet of the Apes movie and how much I love that movie. So obviously I'm biased towards this franchise. I love Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So it was just kind of a perfect storm for me. It was a franchise that I already loved. And then Rise, when they rebooted it, was just fantastic. And then it just built on that momentum. And it's just such a good fucking movie, man. I will say, if I have to be objective, that the human characters in this movie aren't the best, not the most well-defined characters I've ever seen, but honestly, it's the ape story.
Yeah.
And so I understand why they didn't spend as much time developing these characters. I do think that Jason Clarke's character is well developed. His son, not so much. And then maybe Gary Oldman's character, not so much. You have a little bit at the end, with the iPod and him kind of crying over his family and whatnot. So you do get a little character development, but for the most part, it's the ape story, and they just fucking carry this movie. It's just, and the turn at the end is fantastic. I love this movie so much, and I could talk forever about it, but I won't. I will just say that this movie ruined the Oscars for me, because if you don't give this movie the best visual effects, then the Oscars don't fucking matter anymore.
Yeah.
This movie did not win that award last year. It was nominated, but did not win. I think Interstellar won.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I don't know.
So fuck the Oscars. They're a joke to me. Cause if you don't give this movie, my main problem with the award is the fact that if you don't give this movie the visual effects award, then you're admitting that the motion capture isn't visual effects. Well, if that's the case, then Andy Serkis should have gotten an acting, because I mean, it's not a two-way street.
Yeah.
So the Oscars no longer mean what they used to mean to me, because this movie, I hold this movie in such high regard that if you don't give it the visual effects award, then the fucking award doesn't matter. So that is my list, my 10 through 1. I'm pretty happy with it. I stressed out a lot about making it. I know Tyler talked about that last week, is that we're huge movie buffs, and this list meant a lot to us. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I know I really enjoyed talking about these movies, and I really enjoyed listening to Tyler's list last week. And I'm really looking forward to hearing his 5 through 1 next week.
Oh man, I really enjoyed hearing your 10 through 1. I know that, behind the scenes, we talked about our lists as we were making them, and you struggled a bit with putting Dawn at number 1 because you were scared of it being so new and it being like a knee-jerk reaction. But I think that you have a lot of great reasoning for why that is your favorite movie, and it's awesome to think of how it is for you. Just a perfect storm of something that you used to love, updated and made really well. So yeah, it's cool. It's a really great list.
Yeah, I'm kind of a hipster when it comes to stuff like that. If you notice, there's a lot of old movies on my list, and it's just kind of something that I've always prided myself on, is that I've always said that if it's a good movie, I like it no matter what. Like, even if it's not a subject that I care that much about, if it's well done, I will find something that I like about it. And so to put a movie that's so recent on my list and as high as number 1, it did bug me. But the more I thought about it, I wasn't just going to make it 3 just because it just came out last year. It is my favorite movie of all time. So I'm going to stick with the list, and I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to be honest. That is that's my most favorite movie. It is my favorite movie of all time. So I'm going to stick with it.
I respect that, and that's awesome. And I like your list a lot.
Okay, cool, man. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing yours.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So we like to cap off each episode by asking kind of a really nerdy question. I think nerds are kind of known for the question, like, what's your favorite blank? And I talked about with High Fidelity that was kind of my first movie, my go-to movie when people would ask me what my favorite movie was. I think it's a cool question. And so we go back and forth, each week. I believe it's Tyler's week. And so he's going to ask me whatever he's going to ask me. I don't know.
All right. So I work in retail. I'm human resources at a major retail company, and I don't know how known this is, but by the time this episode comes out, it will already have passed. But this Friday, the 4th is Force Friday.
Yes.
Which is when all the Star Wars Force Awakens merchandise is releasing, and it's a big deal. And the company that I work for is making a big deal out of it. And, the store I work at is staying open until 2 a.m. to release all these toys and
I might stop in.
Yeah, all the other merchandise. It's kind of a cool thing. They're giving away like these giant Chewbacca's, and they're pretty cool. So it's definitely a big deal. And, it's getting me even more amped up for The Force Awakens. And I've just been thinking about how much I love that trailer that they put out earlier this year. So it got me thinking, what is Pat's favorite trailer of all time, specifically that got him really jacked for the movie or got him really excited for the movie? So I'll go ahead and talk about mine first, and then we'll see what you have to say. There's 3 trailers that came to mind when I started thinking about this, and they're all sequels actually. So the first trailer I would say I ever fell in love with was actually Star Wars Episode 3. Even though Episode 1 and 2 let me down, I really loved the trailer for Episode 3 because it teased what I was really anticipating, and that's the fight between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. And just seeing them swing their lightsabers at each other around lava, like, sent chills down my spine. I worked at a movie theater at the time, and I would constantly go into that theater that it was playing in, whatever movie it was attached to. I actually think it was attached to an Ice Age movie for whatever reason.
Don't knock those movies.
and I would watch it every day. That being said, that is not my favorite trailer of all time.
Okay, so you just wasted our time.
Yeah, I went into that a lot more in detail than I thought I would. Spider-Man 3 really got me jacked as well. And then that was a total letdown. I was so excited for that movie.
Oh, man. I was. And I defended that movie for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Let the hate run through you.
Yeah.
But actually, it's kind of a boring answer, but I would say the trailer that got me most excited for a movie was the second Dark Knight trailer.
Okay.
Because
I kind of figured that would be the one.
It was the first glimpse of the Joker, and it really got me excited for the movie. And not only that, but it was like an introduction to, or actually it was like the result. They did a lot of scavenger hunts and online, promotional stuff for this movie to build up.
It was kind of like the first one that really did that online marketing campaign that was super, super successful.
Yeah, it was super successful, super intense, and super detailed. And like after fans had unlocked a certain amount of stuff and had gone through all this stuff, this was what was released afterwards.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was kind of like the culmination of all this marketing, and then it also just showed the characters and kind of showed a taste of what the movie was going to be about. And if I wasn't already excited enough for that movie before it came out, it really just pushed me over the edge. Like, I was so excited for that movie, and it actually lived up to expectations. So
yeah, for sure.
That is my answer.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I kind of figured as soon as you posed the question that was going to be your answer, even though you went about it a weird way. You kind of beat around the bush for a while there. But I mean, I agree with you completely. The scavenger hunt was great. It was definitely one of those campaigns that somebody got promoted that thought of that. Like, sure, yeah, they made a shit ton of money off themselves for that campaign. That was awesome. I remember that. And it also got me jacked for the movie. And I remember that was kind of one of the first things that really us becoming friends, where we were looking forward to that movie and going to see the midnight showing. And even though one of my ex-girlfriends kind of ruined it for me, but she was kind of being a baby the whole time and pounding. But I remember that was kind of our first, it wasn't our first mandate because I think we saw Wall-E before that.
Yeah,
but,
we sure did.
I just remember us talking and being really jacked for that movie. And it was kind of one of those first things that we kind of bonded over. So I don't want to say that it's going to have a special place in my heart because that makes me sound a little weird.
I actually, spoiler alert for my top 5, Wall-E's not in it, but I toyed with putting
son of a bitch.
I toyed with putting Wall-E at like number 10 or something. Yeah. And it's like,
oh, that's cute.
Just because it's a really good movie. That's it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the only reason. You had to make it weird and invite Jake.
I don't know. I was kind of convinced that you thought it was a real date, so
yeah.
Bring him a third wheel.
Anyways, so my answer is I talked about Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and that was an awesome trailer. But I'm actually going to talk about a different Matt Reeves movie, and that is Cloverfield. And I know that's kind of a weird pick, but it was just such an awesome fucking trailer. It was done so well.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea what this fucking movie was, and it did so well. Like, it didn't give away what it was. And after I saw that trailer, I was like, I gotta fucking see this movie and figure out what's going on. Because they tease it so well. It's a perfect teaser trailer. It introduces the characters really well. You kind of get what's going on. It's kind of funny at certain aspects. I mean, it's only like less than 2 minutes long, so it's kind of hard to really bring the comedy. Yeah. And then it gives you just enough to tease you, but you still don't quite know what's happening to these people. Like, you know that they're at this party, and you know something huge is happening, but you don't, what's going on. You just see the explosion. You don't know that it's a monster movie. You don't really know what's going on. And so I really appreciate that, because one of the things I really loved about the movie, now that I've seen it, and I love this fucking movie, is the fact that it's not about the monster, it's about the characters. And so I really like that the trailer doesn't show you the monster. Plus, it really doesn't show you a whole lot. It's more about these characters, and that's what the movie's about. So I really appreciate now that I've seen the movie multiple times, I appreciate that trailer even more, because it is kind of a smaller version of the movie.
Yeah, that teaser could have gone one of two ways. It could have gone the way it did, where it was really successful, or it risked not showing enough and audiences not being interested. But it did exactly what you said it did. It didn't give anything hardly away about the movie, but captured everybody's imagination and, you know, what is this movie and what's happening, and it was very successful because of it.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those, the movie itself was one of the last movies where I was just like, the found footage, I'm just like, put the fucking camera down. And it's funny because one of my favorite comedians, one of my favorite stand-up comedians, TJ Miller, is actually the guy holding the camera in this movie. But when I saw it, I didn't know who the fuck TJ Miller was. Nobody knew who he was. I actually, years later, found out he was a stand-up comedian. I was like, the annoying guy from Cloverfield. Yeah. So, that's just kind of a funny story about this movie. But yeah, the movie is great. If you haven't seen it, what the fuck are you doing? Watch this movie. It's great. And then the teaser trailer was just kind of, like I said, a perfect, like, micro example of what the movie was going to be. And that's what teaser trailers should be. So
absolutely,
I like it a lot. All right. So that'll end it. And this episode, I enjoyed it. I hope you guys did as well. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at The Nerds Podcast, like us on Facebook, follow us on Google+, vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com, rate, review, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically your favorite podcatcher. We're on it. Email us at thenerdsyou'relooking@gmail.com. Any suggestions, comments, whatever, email us there. I think that's it.
Absolutely.
All right. For Patrick Coon. I forgot how we edited the episode for a second there. I was doing so well. God damn it. For Patrick Coon.
I'm sorry. This is like 4 weeks in a row that we fucked up the ending.
Yeah, I know.
This is Bush League. All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
For Patrick Coon.
Tyler Hunt.
We are the nerds you're looking for. Take it easy, guys.
See you guys.
Join the Obsessive Viewer podcast on October 16th at the Irving Theater on East Washington Street for The Obsessive Viewer presents Shocktober in Irvington Part 2. It's a one-night event screening of short films, including the premiere of J.P. Leck's The Lantern, the latest entry in his cross-medium Elsewhere world universe, as well as a modern retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart from the guys at Synapshot Productions and Billy and Brandon Watch Movies. There will be giveaways, raffles, interviews with the filmmakers, and so much more. All proceeds will go directly to the Irvington Historical Society. For more details, go to shocktoberinirvington.com. October 16th at the Irving Theater. Help support local filmmakers and a great community with The Obsessive Viewer.